Hello, I'm Amin Karbasi, the host of Behind the Scene Chats at ICML. I have the pleasure of having Zico Coulter, one of the program chairs of this year of ICML, and Nicholas Carlini from DeepMind. And today we are going to mainly talk about AI safety and security because machine learning has grown a lot and it has become an important technology, and with any technology there is a question about how safe it is to use this technology. So we are hoping to have a very interesting and entertaining conversation with two amazing researchers in this area. But before doing that, let's maybe dive deep a little bit into the personal journeys of these people. So let me start with Nicholas. Hello.
Hello.
I hope that you're doing well.
Yes.
Very good. So can you tell us a little bit about your scientific journey? How did you start, and why you ended up here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I got started as traditional security researcher. I was doing work in software security, very low level vulnerability analysis, and then switched in the middle of my PhD to machine learning, and have been having fun doing that ever since.
Very good. So Zico, I know that you have many hats. You are now, you're the director of the machine learning department, chief expert at Bush. Are you still?
Yeah, so
Okay. You're chief technical advisor at Gary Swan, the co-PC of ICML. Anything more?
No.
No, that's
that covers it.
okay. And any one of them you want to trade, or which one is your favorite one?
My main job is, of course, as the director of the machine learning department at Carnegie Mellon, where I both run a research group there, and I hopefully helped the faculty in the department to get their work done and enable them and the students there to be as productive as possible.
Cool. So, can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background's kind of sort of the mirror image of Nicholas's in some way. I started in the field of machine learning. So I started publishing machine learning about 22 years ago, which is crazy to think about. It's been that long. And ever since then, I worked in the field of machine learning for a long time since my PhD. And then about 10 years or so ago, I started getting much more involved with the field of AI safety and security, or at least what is now broadly considered to be these fields of AI safety and security. And in this time, done a lot of work on understanding the robustness of systems, understanding where they fail, understanding if they be made secure, and what cases can they and can they not, and then trying to basically understand how we quantify these things from a scientific perspective.
Okay, so let me start with Nicholas. So why do you like so much to steal models and data? Like, why you have this obsession?
Sure. Yeah, so maybe for context, most of my work is attack work. We have a paper here on how to steal part of a production language model by making standard queries to the API. So we have, from OpenAI's models, recovered at least part of what their models are doing with permission. But I guess the motivation behind it is basically, without knowing what the best attacks are possible, you can't possibly hope to defend against them.
Right.
And so you want to have a very good understanding of what attacks might be possible before you try and defend against them, or else you might end up in a world where you're defending against things that don't matter, or you'll end up defending against things, but what you're defending against is not the best that's possible. And the general argument in the computer security community is people who want to be malicious are not going to publish their findings on how to do the best attacks. They are going to sit on them and exploit them as much as they can.
Right.
And so it is by far the better option to publish the best attacks that we have, so that the people who are willing to do good science and try and defend against things, like Zico, can actually defend against them, as opposed to not knowing what's possible.
Yeah, I agree that in the security community, that's the standard approach, right? So that there are like a whole community of people trying to attack models. But this is maybe something new to the ML community, that newer at least, right? So that this is the way that we have to do it, because here, it was mostly about for many years at least, it was about how to even run the model that it does what it has to do, right? And so Zika, there is all, definitely like ethical concerns, right, about such attacks, and at least in some there are ethical committees, whether we have to publish or not publish. How does ICML view that?
To be honest, I think right now maybe one of the issues with this community, because this is a relatively new, I shouldn't say it's new, because these adversarial machine learning does in fact go back a very long time.
Sure.
But I think what I'll describe it as is the prominence and the application of some of these methods is reaching to a certain extent a new height. In a way that it already has been in cybersecurity, but which is not the case so far in machine learning. Our attacks now are suddenly practical things that can actually affect real operating systems. And what this means, I think, is that we as a field have not yet codified essentially a standard for responsible disclosure of these in the same way the cybersecurity field has.
Right.
And that means, to a certain extent, a lot of groups are kind of making it up as they go. They are saying, well, this attack, I think, has some potentials to cause harm, so I'm going to disclose it and wait some time, but then it may or may not be addressed in that amount of time. And then what do I do after this? And it's unclear, to me at least, if we should adopt the same procedures, if we should have different procedures as the cybersecurity field. And ultimately, I think we are much better right now than we were maybe a year or 2 years ago, but we are still not yet close to having an accepted standard of the field as to responsible disclosure.
Actually, that's a very good point. So I wanted to ask this question later, but I think you're pivoting into that. What is the metric of success, right? So here, how can we say that in 5 years we have succeeded? And we improved the field, right? So right now we are just disclosing this and that, and then saying that this kind of prompt injection, for instance, can do this particular harm. But we are scientists at the end of the day, and we want to make sure that whatever we are doing is not like just random walks. There should be some metric, right, for that. So can you envision, any of you, that there, what could that metric be?
I mean, I would like to have, I guess from the attack side, I would like to have a better understanding of which attacks are actually ones we should be worried about, and which ones are just academic concerns.
Right.
Because I feel like in security we have a very good understanding of which are the attacks that people actually implement if they're going to go do bad stuff. And in the machine learning community, I don't think we have that yet. Like we know all kinds of things are, I guess, possible, we have poisoning, we have episode examples, we have prompt injection stuff now, all these wide range of attacks, but we don't really have a solid understanding of if someone actually wants to cause harm, which of these things are they going to do, if any, or are they just going to take some non-machine learning approach and just attack the system another way? I don't know, that's what, even if we didn't defend against any of these, I would count it as a win if we just knew which of these systems, like which of these methods people are going to actually implement, so we can know where to put our effort.
I would say I think the biggest thing, so I agree of course with this, I'm not getting much disagreement, I know. I agree with this of course. But I also think on the evaluation side, I hope we can make some substantial improvements in evaluating systems. I think right now there's sort of these two, well, maybe three axes of attack that we have, or of at least, I shouldn't say attack because it's not always the goal of it, but sort of how we probe models. On the one side, you have very much just static benchmarks, right? So, the public benchmarks, oh, we move up in the score, therefore the model is better. On the other side, you have red teaming. So humans thinking what they can do creatively about it, but humans are not perfect. They have limited resources to devote to constantly trying to break models, and so that is a good use, but not sufficient either. And on the third axis, you have these sort of more automated, but worst case attacks on models, right? And somehow these things are treated all very separately. Yes. There's some work in blending them, but they're all treated kind of as different things. And I think we need to strengthen all of them. We need to sort of enhance our automated evaluation capabilities, this kind of stuff. But my real hope is that we can start to blend these to a more holistic kind of evaluation, such that we start to get a better sense of, if not perfectly, at least do we have a bit more confidence that our evaluations and whatever mix of those three versions we end up using, do we have a better confidence that our evaluations actually elicit and demonstrate these safety and security concerns that we do have about systems? And I think right now our benchmarks don't do that. And I think we need to get to a point where, even if not perfect, because perfection here is extremely hard, if not impossible to achieve, we have a greater degree of confidence in our automated evaluations and in our evaluations as a whole than we have right now.
Right. Do you have any sense of legal issues with stealing? No,
this is a very good question. I have no sense of this. Fortunately, for all of the work that we've done, we have permission to do it before we do it. So we have a paper here on stealing some stuff from OpenAI. So before we did this, we sent an email to the OpenAI general counsel with I would like to steal your model. Can I please do this? And they were like, I guess. And so we sort of worked out an agreement. And the final paper, for example, I recovered some information about ChatGPT 3.5 that I know, but is not in the paper.
Yes.
And the reason why we did this is because we want to have some actual agreement on not actually causing harm, but still doing the research.
The issue is that you're at Google, but let's say that a student at CMU or a student at Yale, you have the whole legal team at Google behind you, and you're very well known, and these OpenAI or others, they might actually answer. But how can a researcher do such kind of research?
So there's a very nice position paper talking about in computer security, there are usually programs with bug bounties and things where companies will say, the following systems are in scope for anyone to attack. You can attack it as much as you want, as long as you follow these terms and disclose these vulnerabilities to us, and then oftentimes we will even pay you for it. And so I think Google has these systems. Recently, I think they increased the amount of money they'll pay by some large amount. And so these systems exist in standard security. They don't quite exist to the same degree in machine learning security. There was a research paper here that tries to argue this should probably happen. That would make sense to me.
Right.
But yeah, I agree.
So Zico, one there are some voices in the community that AI. I think that AI safety and security is on everyone's mind now because of the prominent of how big these models are and how well they do in many different things. But some argue that AI safety and security is a made-up problem. What do you think about that?
I disagree with this problem. I disagree with this statement from you. I don't think it's made up. So I think there is obviously in our community here a vast array of opinions on the capabilities and, more importantly, the forecasting of those capabilities over the next years. That's a fact. I don't think there's a disagreement on the fact that there's disagreement.
Right.
What I would say is these systems at this point are in enough widespread use that, in my opinion, everyone should be able to acknowledge the fact that the completely, I don't want to say unrestricted use, but the use of these systems inside larger software components already, which is happening already in many cases, already opens up essentially risk surfaces that we would normally even associate with traditional kind of computer security and traditional risks. And so even if you, which I am not, but even if you do believe that sort of the capabilities of these models are going to be essentially plateauing very soon, and this is the best we're going to have, and everything is as it is right now, I think that there's still clearly massive use for the models as they exist right now, and security and safety vulnerabilities as they occur in these models right now have the potential to cause such vulnerabilities in other software systems and larger components that we're building with these systems. And so I think that in some sense, regardless of your views of the field and how AI is progressing, the fact of the prominence of these models should make you concerned about these topics, because they have, arguably in a way they've never had before in AI, clear implications on the practical use and integration of our current AI models for all the domains we want to currently solve with them.
Right. In security, in the security community, there is this belief that you cannot achieve security by obscurity. Does it apply to open source models, to the release of open source models?
Can you say more what you mean by this?
So, we are releasing very, very big open source models, right? And so they are very capable.
Yes.
And so, is there going, so there are concerns that malicious users can actually use these models in order to do all sorts of things, right? So there is this belief in the community that maybe we should not release these very big models, right?
Sure. Suppose there's some system out there in the world, and I exploit it by writing a program. Maybe I did the wrong thing because I had the ability to write code. If I didn't have a compiler that could write a program for me, I didn't have Python, I didn't have C, I couldn't have exploited the system.
Yeah.
You don't blame programming language. You don't blame the compiler for the bad thing happening. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, at the heart of this problem is that are we building AI compilers, or we are building a very, very a weapon, right? So you cannot extend this argument to nuclear power. You don't say that it should be open source. Everyone should have, right? So it is highly regulated, right?
Okay.
It is highly regulated because of. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, so okay. So I understand what you're saying. That in the limit, and okay, I think there may exist some system in some future that is so powerful that I would consider not releasing or be worried about this. I think most people would probably agree that this statement is true.
Okay.
The question is, what is that system and how far away is it?
Right.
At this conference, there are people who will tell you that it is 100 years away, the current systems are the wrong approach, language models will not give us this, and there are people who will say it is 3 years away, or by the end of the decade we will have these systems. I do not know which of these is correct, but I can tell you is that those are not the systems we have right now.
Right.
And so I would say we should probably not say we shouldn't release what we currently have, because in some future this may be bad, because in lots of futures many things may be bad. You could make the same analogy, machine learning models are built on programming languages. You could say, we should stop developing work on programming languages because in some machine learning future, these things would become bad. I mean, so you have to put the line somewhere, should we stop doing work on power? We're going to need more than probably a gigawatt in order to be able to train a model. No power above a gigawatt, because this will stop, the development of large data centers.
Sure. So, Zico, in your opinion, is there any hope that we actually get to a safe AI paradise, or this is going to be a cat and mouse game forever.
I don't think those two are necessarily mutually exclusive, I guess that was the way I would
A
put
paradise
it.
with cat and mouse.
I think that security is a process, not an end, not a fixed system. And the evolution I would like to see is one where we start to address these things in an incremental fashion, which I think a lot of the research, to be clear, attempts to do. That is our goal with a lot of this. I think I'm not ultimately pessimistic about this, despite despite some attitudes I think in the field, right? I'm not pessimistic about this. I think that we are making progress and we can make progress. It's just hard, and there are setbacks, and there are major challenges to doing this work correctly. We have made major progress in cybersecurity over the past 30 years, I would argue. Hopefully that's correct, right?
Sure,
okay,
yeah,
you would agree. Yet we still have programs with bugs in them.
Yeah.
Right, as we all are familiar with
Yes.
this recent from recent events at this conference. And so I think that we can get to a place where the safety of AI systems is thought much more like security of computer systems, where are there going to be bumps? Are there going to be issues that crop up along the way? Yes, almost certainly. But we can systematize our approach more. We can take a more scientific view of these problems. And doing so, hopefully, will enable us to address, if not all, at least a large number of these issues that can mitigate some of the worst outcomes that might come about here. And that is a hard problem, but I would not be working on it if I didn't think to some degree it benefited from that work.
I can disagree with Zico.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know to what extent I believe what I'm about to say, but here, let me just just for the fun of the matter. So in cryptography, let's say, the field of cryptography, let's say symmetric key cryptography, in academic research, went from, in the course of 15 years, like nothing works, we don't know what we're doing, to like systems that we cannot still break to this day. So like the field of like academic public cryptography, symmetric key cryptography started like early, like late 80s, early 90s.
Yep.
By 2000, AES, we cannot break to today. 20
Right.
years, 25 years, we've tried to break it, we failed.
Right.
The field of adversarial machine learning, maybe 15 years old, maybe 20, depending on how you count it. We have come nowhere close.
Yes.
And it is not obvious we have an end in sight.
Yeah, so that actually I like very much the analogy here, that I think in cryptography there was a time that it was also very ad hoc.
Oh yeah, and
Right.
like my advisor, so like my advisor has like a period of like 3 years or something where he broke, I don't know, 10 published defenses at conferences.
Yes.
But like he can't do that anymore, and like no
Right.
one can. But like I started my PhD breaking random defenses at conferences. To this day, if you give me a defense published at a conference, I could probably break it in a day or two. Like it's like
That's your hobby.
yeah, yes, and like it's like that piece at least has not. I mean, the defenses have gotten better, but like I can still break them, and like this would not have been possible if it was in some other field. I think.
Right. So what are you most excited this year about?
Most of this year.
Yeah.
What I'm most excited about is in some sense, reshaping of this field in light of the progress in large language models and generative AI broadly. Now, you could argue that this is just throwing new challenges at us, but I think in some ways the field of traditional adversarial machine learning, which was largely in image domains with very sort of fixed threat models and very fixed kind of attacks, that field had kind of, I would say, plateaued, and I would even argue it had plateaued at a place where we couldn't really solve the problem we were hoping to solve, even though we arguably did understand very good defenses. And to be clear, there are defenses that you can't break, like the certified defenses.
Yeah, but you flip a coin,
it's just
and then
that,
half the time it works.
It's just that, well, it's more just that you sacrifice too much performance to
Right.
achieve that, right? There
Yeah.
are specifications we can defend against, even formally. It's just that that's too rigid of a...
That's very narrow.
It's a very narrow set of constraints, and it arguably, you pay too high a cost
Yeah.
getting those models. Much harder problem, by the way, in language models, of course. But I also would say that the real problem with what adversarial machine learning was doing kind of in the purely image space, perturbations of images, is that it was getting too divorced from practical problems. No one cares if you can modify an image. I mean, I shouldn't say this, but for the most part, that sort of threat is not very prominent in the real deployment of machine learning models, or at the very least, there are much bigger problems than that in the practical deployment.
Before that.
I think we're getting to a place with generative AI where this is becoming a very prominent challenge that these systems can and should overcome, at least in a practical sense. Maybe with some loss of performance, maybe not. But in a practical sense, we really are seeing the fact that we would like to be able to control models, make them follow a specification in a way that we can't fully right now. And the fact of this problem is so front and center, it is so prominent, is actually in a lot of ways a very good thing, because it means that there's a clear need for it. There's the motivation, there is the clear and present requirement that if we want to keep building AI in all the ways that we hope and have it make all the useful products we would like it to make, we need to start addressing this problem. In a lot of ways, this is really exciting in the field because it means that the work we do is more and more along the critical path of deployment of AI systems.
Yeah, my advisor used to say that, if the problem was not hard, I would have not worked on it. So the flip side is that what are you most disappointed about?
I would have liked better defenses. I don't know. Like, this is like when I came in the field, like I expected that maybe this is what most people thought. We had this sort of toy adversarial example game. Given an image, can I flip the lowest bit of like 10 of the pixels and make the model change its classification? I thought this would have been solved. Maybe this was naive. I think I would maybe argue that probably it was. It turned out to be a much harder problem than we thought. But I don't know. Coming into this, I thought we would have this figured out.
I see.
And good for me, it hasn't. Because like, we have to do a bunch of fun work on it. But I don't know. My hope was that we would have had made like very significant progress. I don't know. Maybe that was naive, but that was my hope.
Yeah.
This is still a big disappointment. But maybe I think most of the community I think has realized this too.
Right.
We sort of recalibrated our goals away from sort of this very, very strong safety towards let's just make the very bad thing not happen.
Yeah. And my final question is from both of you, like for the little girls and boys who want to be, in AI safety security,
Sure.
what should they do?
Let's see. I think the easiest thing to do here is just to find whatever piece of the field excites you. And this is what I do, right? Okay, when you asked at the beginning why I like to write attacks. And so like the fundamental motivation of like long-term why I get up every day and do attacks is that I think it makes things more useful. But like on a day-to-day basis, I'm not thinking about, I'm doing good for society. I wake up because it's fun. I want to do work on these problems. And then I try and connect that to something that I think actually matters. I think this is the easiest way to do these kinds of research problems, is to find whatever piece of it is the one that is most exciting. Make sure you're not actively doing harm, but try and connect it to something that's actually beneficial. But like work on whichever problem is the one that you think of that you can actually be motivated to solve, as opposed to the one that you think is the most important, because otherwise you won't be able to bring yourself to work on that.
Right. Do you disagree?
No, of course I disagree with that. That's almost impossible to disagree with. We've had one disagreement maybe this whole time. I think there's a lot. So you're asking this question sort of for, I presume, the younger generation, and I'm I have two kids. I think a lot about the genuinely younger generation at this point. And there is a lot of uncertainty right now about what the future of employment and what the future of coding and science will look like, given current advances in AI. And I'm not going to speculate on this because this is now getting outside the topic of sort of the AI safety. But what I would say is two things. People getting into this field should be fundamentally users of the technology that this field is analyzing. Right? So one thing Nicholas and I very much agree on is that we should absolutely all be using LLMs to write web pages and write code. Right? And and we both do, and we're both huge advocates for this, right? And so part of, I think, honestly speaking, why we I mean, maybe this is, I don't know if there's correlation or causation here, but I think part of the reason, part of the fun of working with these systems and looking for ways to make them safer comes with the fact that we are both actually quite avid users of this technology. So if you want to get involved with safety and security of these technologies, one thing I would say is be a user of them. Maybe that's going to be not a challenge for the next generation. They're all going to be the LLM native, LLM natives. But I think it's important because I think that there's this debate about, I think a lot of people in our field still don't use these things nearly as much as they should.
They should, yeah.
And I think that if you want to understand the most pressing issues of a field, you should use the tools of that field. And so I would encourage people to make good use of them in the right contexts, and that will help them become better researchers when it comes to AI safety and security.
Okay, very good. I think we are basically at the end of our interview and the hot seat. Thank you both very much for agreeing to be and for disagreeing. Will be at least one. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.